All right. Speaking of Michael Busch, we do need to have a quick discussion here about MLB All-Star Game voting, which is now open. I think that you and I pretty much agree. There's one Cub that I think is guaranteed to be in that All-Star Game, and I do think that's going to be Pete Crow-Armstrong. I think that he'll probably end up winning a fan vote to get into the game. But outside of him, what other Cubs do you think are going to be on that All-Star roster or should be on that All-Star roster?
Well, Kyle Tucker for sure, and I would not be surprised if Pete Crow and Kyle are both starters. Um, if you look at Fangraphs, the three most valuable outfielders in the National League right now are Pete Crow, Corbin Carroll, and Kyle Tucker.
That's pretty good company.
Yeah, so that's your National League outfield. Some of the other positions, Michael Busch is having a really good year, but Michael Busch is in the same league playing the same position as Freddie Freeman and Pete Alonso and
Yeah.
Bryce Harper and Matt Olson, and just it's not going to happen for him.
Yeah.
There's just
I was going to say the two guys that have the top WAR in the National League among outfielders are Pete Crow-Armstrong and Kyle Tucker. So I think that if you were voting just based on performance for outfield, I do think there's a great argument to be made that you should vote for both of those guys. I just think that Pete Crow is such a fan favorite. I definitely think he's going to get a lot of national attention and a lot of national votes. And I definitely do think he's going to get voted into the All-Star game no matter what.
Yeah, and MLB's been giving him a lot of heat too.
Yeah, they've been featuring him all over their social pages. When he hit that home run against the Tigers, everybody was paying attention to that for sure. So absolutely 1,000% agree with that. Is there anybody else on the team that you think could potentially have an argument to get in? I think that the only other one that I had kind of questioned about was Michael Busch, just because his numbers have been so solid. But I do think there's the issue, as you mentioned, of him facing left-handed pitching. I think that, MLB would probably not include him in the game. But I think you also have to keep in mind you have Matt Olson and Pete Alonso, who are both having really strong seasons. And Freddie Freeman's no slouch either. So he may just be blocked at first base.
Yeah, that's my feeling. And, Nico Horner, you look at every position, the Cubs, other than in the outfield, every Cub starter is like third or fourth best in the league at their position. Yeah. So they're just kind of like, even Seiya, as good a year as he's having, you look at DHs in the National League and you've got Ohtani, you've got Schwarber, and so
yeah,
it's just it's a hard case to make for anybody. And you can't take him as an outfielder because every team's got to have a guy, and the Marlins' one guy is going to be Kyle Stowers.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that the only other guy that maybe you see having a shot and maybe perhaps being a reserve, I think you end up kind of playing that same thing where you're going to end up having players that are going to have to represent their teams at the catcher position. I think that Carson Kelly's had a really solid year, but I think that platooning early with Miguel Amaya and the fact that he's kind of cooled off a little bit recently, I don't see a reserve spot coming up for him in that game, but obviously a tremendous start to the season for a Carson Kelly. So if we're going to mention Cubs position players that could potentially get into the All-Star game, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least float his name out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that happens too is, with the All-Star game, there's some guys who just don't want to go. And so they get, quote, injured a week before the game.
Yeah. So there's always a possibility he could be added as a reserve player. And I think that I want to say the league probably loves to look for opportunities like that to get a guy who's perhaps on the borderline and probably isn't going to be an all-star under normal circumstances. I think that they would potentially jump at the opportunity to include a guy like a Carson Kelly because he's from a bigger market team, and the fact that, it would be a very rare chance for him to be in the game.
Yeah. And, the more they love to get guys from the Cubs, the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Braves, all the big market teams, all the teams that sell a lot of merchandise, because, let's face it, if they could get a Nico Horner into the game, for instance, I mean, he's not going, but I'm using him as an example. How many Nico Horner All-Star jerseys are they going to sell compared to how many Kyle Stowers jerseys?
Is anybody going to buy a Kyle Stowers jersey? Not to insult Marlins fans, but that's just not a name that really kind of fires you up.
Yeah, I like him. He's a goofy looking dude.
Of course. Okay. Well, you know what? I retract all previous statements. I completely forgot that that's the benchmark for a Frank Nova jersey purchase.
Damn right.
Oh my God. So
There's one place that does like customized throwback jerseys, and I still want to do like a late '70s pullover, number 17 for Dave Rosello.
there you see. There's your daily Dave Rosello mention, courtesy of I don't know what business would sponsor such a thing. We'll say Wheatley American Vodka. That's who would sponsor that, I suppose.
And hey, if you go onto YouTube, there is a video on YouTube of a Dave Rosello walk-off hit from 1977.
Yeah. Claire and I are both aware of that because you totally sent that to us last
Oh,
week.
I did. I did.
As soon as you found it, you were like, I have to share this with the group. And, we're very appreciative of that.
Yeah. And yeah, somebody, was it Brett had a birthday this week? Another Cubs blogger had a birthday this week, and I sent that to him. Like, what do you give to a man who has everything? A Dave Rosello walk-off hit.
I'm sure he really appreciated the kind thoughts and the gesture. I know I would have.